Title: I thought I was helping my brother save the family business. Turns out, I was just funding his secret second family. Original post. Let me start with this. I, 32M, grew up in a family where we didn't talk about things. Feelings, struggles, money, those were silent topics, kept out of respect or shame, depending on who you asked. We own a small hardware store called Lawson & Sons Hardware, founded by my grandfather in 1963. It wasn't anything big, just a one-story, brick and glass storefront with dusty shelves and a bell that jingled when you walked in. But it was ours. It stood for 3 generations. It had character. And to me, it was a symbol of our family's endurance. After my dad died of cancer when I was 22, my older brother Dan, 38M now, 30 at the time, took over the business. I was still in college finishing a degree in IT. Dan had already married, had a kid, and was the golden child who everyone said was born for business. And I believed it. I really did. Dan had a way with people. The kind of guy who remembered your birthday, could fix your sink while selling you a wrench, and had that magnetic energy that made you want to say yes. I was quieter, more numbers-focused, analytical. We balanced each other. So when Dan came to me 3 years ago saying he needed help saving the store, I said yes. He told me that sales had dipped, a competitor opened a few blocks down, and they were struggling. He wanted to revamp the store, buy inventory in bulk to reduce costs, hire a consultant to modernize the point-of-sale system, and do some modest renovations. He needed $86,000. He didn't ask for it like a loan. He framed it like a shared investment in our future. I was working in IT full-time by then. I'd been saving for a house. I had a decent 401k, and my instincts told me to ask questions. But my emotions? My emotions remembered the guy who taught me to ride a bike. The brother who held me when our dad passed. The guy who always made mom laugh. So I said yes. I emptied my 401k. Gave him every dime. No contract. No agreement. Just trust. That trust cost me more than I ever imagined. The slow realization. The first year was quiet. He kept saying the consultant was still working on strategy. That bulk inventory orders had shipping delays. That renovations were delayed due to permits. I asked if I could help. Maybe manage social media, build a website, streamline logistics. He told me the consultant said to avoid tech disruption too early. That I should be patient. Looking back, I feel like an idiot. Last summer, things started falling apart. Mom, who always seemed financially comfortable, began acting strangely. I caught her cutting pills in half, her blood pressure medication. I asked what was going on. She broke down. Said Dan borrowed $40,000 from her. Told her he didn't want to bother me for more money and that he was doing everything he could to save the business. That was the first sign that something was deeply wrong. The investigation. I went home under the pretense of visiting. I spent time at the store. It was run down. No new shelving. No tech upgrades. And most concerning, very little inventory. I asked around. 2 former employees I'd known since high school had quit in the last 6 months. One of them, Anna, told me Dan was barely around. That he left town at least once a month for vendor meetings, but no inventory ever showed up after. I got suspicious. I asked Mom for access to the old bank records. She was still listed on some of the business accounts. What I found made my stomach drop. There were large, regular transfers from the business to an unknown personal account. Hotel charges in Albany, a city 5 hours away. Monthly. Always the same hotel. Always the same weekend. I called Dan. I didn't confront him yet. I just asked, "Hey, are you still going to Albany for vendors?" He said, "Yeah. Big suppliers out there." I asked, "Which ones?" He stammered. Said, "You wouldn't know them." Then said he had to go. I knew then, something was wrong. But I still wasn't prepared for what came next. The truth comes out. I drove to Albany on one of the weekends he was at a vendor conference. I waited in the hotel lobby for 3 hours. At 7:18 p.m., he walked in. With a woman. And 2 kids. He kissed the woman. Picked up one of the kids. Called her sweetie. I froze. My heart started pounding. I followed them at a distance, got into my car, and watched them disappear into a suite on the 3rd floor. I waited another hour. Then I drove home in silence. I felt betrayed. Furious. But mostly, I felt grief. Because I knew something inside our family had died. The confrontation. I waited until he returned. I went to the store and asked to talk. He didn't deny it. He rubbed his face and said, "You deserve to know. But you don't understand." Turns out, he'd met the woman at a hardware conference. Ironically, he wasn't completely lying. They hooked up. She got pregnant. He started sending her money. Then visiting. Then built a second life. He said, "I'm supporting both families. I didn't abandon you. I'm trying to do the right thing." I exploded. I told him, "You stole from me. You stole from Mom. You lied to your wife. You used our father's store to fund your fantasy." He said, "There's no point in judging me. You gave me that money freely. So did Mom." He said I'd never prove it was fraud. That we were family. That this would ruin everything. He smiled like I wouldn't have the guts. He was wrong. Update. So much has happened since that night. 1. Legal action. I talked to a lawyer. He said my case was messy, but not impossible. Because Dan misrepresented the use of the funds, and because there were patterns of personal use, we could build a fraud case. We filed a civil suit. Dan was livid. He called me every name in the book. Said I was betraying blood. But blood doesn't mean you bleed for someone else's lies. 2. His wife found out. Not from me. She found suspicious charges and confronted him. He cracked. She called me sobbing, asking, "Is it true?" I confirmed it. She moved out with the kids. She also gave a sworn statement for the case, saying he borrowed from her $2.15000. 3. The store collapsed. Dan refused to cooperate. Vendors dropped their accounts. The bank repossessed the building. The business that lasted 3 generations died in less than 3 years under his reign. Final fallout. Here's where things stand now. The lawsuit. We won. A judge ruled Dan had intentionally misrepresented financial transactions, and despite being family, his actions constituted fraud and financial misconduct. He owes me and Mom $112,000 in damages. We won't get it all back, but the judge ordered wage garnishment and placed a lien on his second car and bank account. His life now. Dan's officially divorced. His ex-wife has full custody. He works part-time at a warehouse, renting a 1-bedroom apartment. He tried reconnecting with his second family, but apparently, the woman found out about the extent of his fraud and cut him off too. So now he's alone. And while I don't take joy in someone else's ruin, I take peace in knowing it was his own doing, not mine. Mom. She lives with me now in a quiet suburb near a lake. She has a small garden, makes herbal tea, and volunteers at a local thrift shop. She told me last week, "I miss your father. But he'd be proud of you. You're the real son who carried our name." We cried together that night. Not just for what we lost, but for what we reclaimed. Me? I started a consultancy for small business families. I help them create checks and balances, transparency, and modern systems to protect legacy and prevent betrayal. I tell them this story, our story, not as a cautionary tale, but as a survival one. Because here's the truth. Family doesn't mean silence. Love doesn't mean blindness. And legacy doesn't mean loyalty to a lie. Thanks for reading. If you're going through something similar, just know you are not the villain for standing up to the ones who hide behind family. You're not the bad guy for demanding truth. And if you're lucky, you'll find that in the ashes of betrayal, something stronger grows. Freedom.